My wife went pale when I arrived at the party with her secret lover's wife. What happened next was pure chaos. I never thought I would be the kind of man to meticulously plan someone's downfall. I believed in loyalty, in trust, in the sanctity of marriage. But that was before I discovered the truth, before I uncovered the lies that had been woven so intricately into my life. Vanessa Reed was the woman I had given everything to. For 10 years, I had loved her, supported her, and built a life around what I thought was an unbreakable bond. And yet, behind the veneer of our perfect marriage, she had been sharing her nights with another man. Not just any man, but Cameron West, a real estate mogul who walked through life with an air of invincibility, believing he could take anything he wanted, including my wife. When I found out, I didn't explode. I didn't confront her with anger or accusations. No, I did something much worse. I stayed silent. I planned. I waited. And then, I set the stage for the grandest act of vengeance they would never see coming. It started with subtle changes. First, they were almost imperceptible, things I could have easily ignored if I hadn't been paying attention. Vanessa started dressing differently, favoring more fitted clothes, subtle yet distinct changes in her perfume, and a newfound obsession with her appearance. The gym became her second home, and she started skipping the homemade dinners she used to cherish, trading them for late work meetings that, conveniently, had no end in sight. Her phone, once an afterthought she would leave around the house, was now practically an extension of her hand. It was always locked, always face down, and she had developed this habit. A quick glance at the screen, a smirk barely perceptible, before tucking it away like it held the world's deepest secret. Conversations between us, once filled with laughter and genuine connection, grew shorter, colder. It was as if she had begun rehearsing our interactions, making sure she gave just enough to maintain normalcy but never enough to invite curiosity. I chalked it up to stress. I reasoned that maybe she was just trying to feel better about herself, to reclaim something she thought she had lost. I even convinced myself that maybe I had been neglecting her, that perhaps there was something I could do differently. But the feeling gnawed at me, an unease that settled into my bones. And then, one evening, she made a mistake. Vanessa was upstairs, showering after another supposed late-night meeting, when I saw it. Her phone, for the first time in weeks, was left unattended on the kitchen counter. It vibrated once, then again. Something inside me hesitated. I had never been the type to check her messages. Trust was the foundation of our marriage, or so I thought. But something about this moment felt different, like fate had decided it was time for me to wake up. I picked up the phone and turned it over. The screen lit up. Last night was amazing. Same time next week. The sender's name made my stomach lurch. Cameron West. My pulse pounded in my ears. My fingers gripped the phone so tightly I thought it might crack. Cameron. Of all people. A man I had welcomed into my home. A man who had sat across from me at dinner, shaking my hand with a confident smile. The betrayal wasn't just in the affair itself. It was in the sheer audacity of it. They weren't just sneaking around. They were laughing behind my back, turning my trust into a joke, humiliating me in a way I hadn't even realized until now. I could have confronted her. I could have stormed upstairs and demanded an explanation. But that would have been too easy, too merciful. No, I wanted something more. I needed something undeniable, something I could throw in her face when the time was right. I placed the phone exactly where it had been, untouched, and walked away as if nothing had happened. But inside, something inside me had cracked open. That night, while she slept soundly beside me, oblivious to the storm brewing in my mind, I began my own investigation. I started small, checking her social media for any subtle signs I had missed. The sudden increase in gym selfies, the new business connections she followed, the carefully curated captions that seemed innocuous but now felt like coded messages. Then I moved to her phone records. Late-night calls, frequent messages exchanged with a number saved under a fake name. The evidence was piling up, but I needed more. I needed undeniable proof. So I hired a private investigator. Within days, he had given me more than I could stomach. Photos of Vanessa and Cameron entering a boutique hotel on the Gold Coast. Restaurant receipts from intimate dinners in secluded booths. Security footage of them stealing kisses in a parking garage, completely unaware of the camera capturing their every move. Every discovery was another dagger, another undeniable confirmation of their betrayal. I wasn't just angry, I was disgusted. Not only with her, but with myself, forever believing she was different. Forever thinking she was incapable of this. The depth of their deceit ran deeper than I had imagined, and the more I uncovered, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a fling. This was something they had carefully orchestrated, assuming they would never be caught. But they were wrong, because I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to destroy them. I couldn't just expose them. That would be too simple, too merciful. Confronting them outright would let them weasel their way out, spin their own story, paint themselves as victims. No, I needed something meticulous, something that would leave them in ruins with no escape. They had played me for a fool, humiliated me behind my back. Now it was my turn to return the favor tenfold. But to do that, I needed someone who had just as much to lose as I did. Catherine Pierce, Cameron's wife, a woman who had spent years beside him, not just as a partner, but as someone who knew the intricacies of his world. Unlike Vanessa, who thrived on superficial luxury and fleeting attention, Catherine was intelligent, methodical. She wasn't just a trophy wife, she was a strategist. And most importantly, she had more reasons than anyone to want Cameron's empire to crumble. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I sent her a single text. I know. Less than an hour later, I received her response. Where? We met at an upscale restaurant downtown. A place too refined for casual gossip but too public for an outright meltdown. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a corner booth, her posture impeccable, her expression unreadable. A glass of red wine rested delicately between her fingers as she watched me approach, her eyes sharp, calculating. I sat down across from her, sliding a thick envelope across the table. She didn't reach for it immediately. Instead, she studied me. You look surprisingly calm for a man whose wife is screwing mine. I smirked. You don't seem all that surprised. She let out a quiet, humorless chuckle and finally picked up the envelope, flipping through the contents, photos, text message transcripts, timestamps, hotel reservations. I watched as her fingers tightened around the pages, her knuckles turning white, but her face remained stoic, composed. Finally, she set the papers down and took a slow sip of wine. Cameron has a type, she murmured, her voice laced with something that wasn't quite sadness, but something deeper. Married women. Ones who think they're special until they realize they're just another conquest. I leaned back, studying her. How long have you known? She exhaled, swirling her wine lazily in the glass. Years. I stopped keeping track. She glanced at the envelope. But this is different. He's never been this reckless before. I nodded. They were never careful. They thought they were untouchable. Catherine's lips curved into something that almost resembled amusement. Cameron's arrogance will be his downfall. I folded my hands on the table. And we're going to make sure of it. For the first time, a flicker of something dangerous flashed in her eyes. You have a plan. I do. But I need your help. She tilted her head slightly, intrigued. You don't strike me as the kind of man who needs assistance. I need someone who understands Cameron's world, I admitted. Someone who knows where it hurts. I want them to experience the same humiliation, the same helplessness they made us feel. She held my gaze, considering my words carefully. What's your endgame? I smirked. Total annihilation. Catherine nodded slowly, as if weighing the idea, letting the weight of it settle over her. Then, finally, she lifted her glass. Let's make them bleed. We didn't just plan revenge. We planned devastation. The Thompson Charity Gala was more than just a high society event. It was a battlefield. The ballroom gleamed under chandeliers that cast golden light over Chicago's elite, their laughter and conversation filling the air with a false sense of security. Everyone here believed they were untouchable, invincible behind their wealth and connections. Tonight, I was going to prove them wrong. Catherine and I arrived exactly 45 minutes after the official start time, fashionably late enough to guarantee that all eyes would be on us. I stepped out of the car first, offering my hand as Catherine emerged, poised and powerful in a midnight blue gown that hugged her frame like armor. My tux had been carefully chosen to complement hers, a silent but calculated statement. The moment our hands linked, a hush spread through the crowd. Whispers rippled like waves as the reality of our presence together began to sink in. Vanessa was the first to spot us. Her champagne flute trembled slightly as she froze mid-sip, her face paling as if she had seen a ghost. Cameron, standing beside her, initially maintained his usual arrogance. A man who believed himself untouchable. But then he followed her gaze and saw me. And worse, he saw Catherine at my side. His smirk faltered just slightly, but it was enough. Richard Thompson, our esteemed host for the evening, approached with a broad smile, extending his hand. Lucas, Catherine, what a surprise to see you two together. Catherine returned his handshake smoothly, her voice laced with just enough warmth to be polite. It's been a long time coming, Richard. Lucas has been a tremendous help to me lately. The emphasis wasn't lost on anyone within earshot, least of all Vanessa and Cameron. I could feel Vanessa's eyes burning into me, but I refused to acknowledge her. Cameron's jaw tensed as he whispered something to her. She shook her head, her fingers tightening around the stem of her glass. Let them wonder. Let them stew. The best part was still to come. The ballroom had been meticulously prepared for the gala, but tonight, I had made a few special adjustments. Massive screens lined the room, originally meant to showcase charity initiatives, past successes, and generous donors. At precisely 9:30 p.m., the screens flickered, and the prearranged slideshow abruptly cut off. In its place, the first image appeared. Vanessa and Cameron stepping into a luxury hotel. A murmur of confusion spread through the guests. Then came the next image. Vanessa in Cameron's arms in a dimly lit hallway, their faces close, lips inches apart. A gasp rippled through the crowd. The images continued, each one damning, each one leaving less and less room for doubt. Them in a restaurant booth, hands intertwined, a grainy security camera still of a stolen kiss in the parking garage. Then came the text messages. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. Same time next week? God. I wish I could just have you all to myself. The whispers turned into outright exclamations. Conversations stopped. People reached for their phones, some to record, others to message those who weren't here to witness the spectacle. And finally, the piece de resistance. A hotel booking confirmation. Vanessa's name printed clearly beside Cameron's. Silence fell. The weight of the evidence was suffocating. Vanessa stumbled forward, her face a mask of disbelief and horror. Lucas, please. I turned to face her, my expression impassive. No, my voice was cold. Final. You don't get to explain. Her lower lip quivered. It's not what it looks like. A dry laugh escaped me. Oh, so you're gonna tell me the cameras are lying? That these messages are just friendly exchanges? I gestured toward the screens, where yet another damning piece of evidence flashed. Tell me, Vanessa, what exactly were you doing in a hotel room with him? Cameron finally snapped out of his frozen state. He stepped forward, anger flickering in his eyes. You think this will ruin me? His voice was low, dangerous. I own this city. Catherine chose that moment to step in, her tone sharp as a blade. Not anymore. She tilted her head, eyes gleaming. Your investors saw the financial reports we sent out this morning. The SEC is already digging into those offshore accounts you thought were well hidden. Cameron's face lost all color. You wouldn't. Oh, but we did. I cut in. And that's just the beginning. Security guards began moving toward Vanessa and Cameron. The guests were no longer pretending not to watch. They were fully enthralled, enraptured by the public downfall of two people who had, until now, been at the top of their world. Cameron's fury boiled over. This isn't over, he spat. You'll regret this. Catherine smirked. The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner. A security guard placed a firm hand on Cameron's shoulder, but he shoved it off. He turned back to me, his expression twisted in rage. You think you're better than me, Callahan? I took a step forward, lowering my voice so only he could hear. No, Cameron, I just don't get caught. His nostrils flared, but before he could say another word, security intervened, escorting him and Vanessa out of the ballroom. Their downfall witnessed by every influential person in Chicago. The affair was a scandal, but their financial ruin? That was the true death sentence. As the doors shut behind them, I picked up a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and turned to Catherine. To new beginnings. She clinked her glass against mine, a victorious glint in her eyes. And to spectacular endings. Vanessa tried to reach out. Again and again. Calls, texts, emails, each one a desperate attempt to reclaim something that had already crumbled. Lucas, please, we need to talk. You have to let me explain. I made a mistake, but it doesn't erase everything we had. I never responded. There was nothing left to say. She had already rewritten our history the moment she chose deception over honesty. I made sure she got nothing in the divorce. Not the house, not the money, not the social status she had once wrapped around herself like armor. The same wealth and privilege she had taken for granted was stripped from her in an instant. The social circles she once commanded turned cold. Friends she had laughed with at gala dinners now whispered behind her back. The invitations stopped coming. The looks of admiration turned to judgment. She went from being Vanessa Callahan, the perfect wife of a successful businessman, to Vanessa, the woman who lost everything because she thought she could have it all. Cameron's fall was even greater. Stripped of his empire, his reputation obliterated, he was left drowning in lawsuits, SEC investigations, and the kind of financial ruin that no PR spin could salvage. The investors fled first, distancing themselves from him like rats escaping a sinking ship. The media feasted on his downfall, headlines painting him as a fraud, a liar, a cautionary tale of arrogance meeting consequences. One by one, his business partners abandoned him, afraid that even being in his proximity would taint their own legacies. His company crumbled, his assets were seized, and the very same people who once praised his vision were now dissecting his failures on morning talk shows. Last I heard, he had moved into a rental outside the city, far from the penthouse suite he used to brag about. The man who once claimed to own this city now barely owned his own dignity. And me? I walked away. Not just from Vanessa, not just from Cameron, but from the man I used to be, the man who believed in loyalty, trust, and blind devotion. That version of me had died the night I discovered the first lie. The night I realized that love, when given to the wrong person, could be the sharpest weapon against you. I was different now. Stronger, colder, and for the first time in a long time completely free. I had no regrets, no second thoughts, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served, not by some higher power but by my own hands, and that was more satisfying than any revenge could ever be. Revenge isn't just about payback. It's about reclaiming your power, and sometimes, the best revenge isn't just making them lose, it's making sure they know they'll never win again. What do you think? Was justice truly served? Or was this a step too far? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping tales. Your support means everything,